Guys, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Alexandra and this is my May wrap-up. So in the month of May, I ended up reading 6 books, which isn't too bad. I actually felt like I read some really great books too. I don't think there was a single book that I gave less than 3 stars to. I try not to rate my books too much because sometimes my opinions can change on them. But anyways, okay, let's get started. The first book that I finished was Circe by Madeline Miller, and this was such a great read. I gave this, I don't even know, like 4.5 stars, 4.2 stars. This book is about Circe, who is the goddess and daughter of Helios, who is the titan slash god of the sun. It's about her struggle as a woman in power during the time. If you were unfamiliar, Circe was actually the first sorceress to ever be born in these Greek myths. Her power really sort of intimidated a lot of the gods. They had a specific amount of power, but they couldn't necessarily make things happen that were out of their control. And so Circe intimidated a lot of them because she brought along this new knowledge that you could actually manipulate the earth to produce a certain type of power over people and things, and this threatened the gods. The book is really wonderful. I'm actually going to do a review on it, which is why I have so many things tabbed, and so I don't want to talk too much about it. I also met Madeline Miller, and she is the nicest person in person. The next book I read, I actually don't have with me because I bought the ebook version, and I would insert it, but I don't know how people do that. So if I can figure it out, I will insert the picture of the title here. So I read the 6th book in the series, which was Immortal Reign by Morgan Rhodes, and it's her Falling Kingdom series. This is the very first book. I'm not going to talk about the 6th book at all because I feel like that's going to spoil not only the first book, but all of the entire series because it's the last book. It's the wrap-up book of the series. I gave that book like a 3.5 star read, and I can't decide if that's because I binged all of these books in the span of 2 weeks, and I was just kind of sort of over some of the dynamics and some of the characters. Like maybe if I had lengthened out the time that I was reading this, maybe that would have been a higher up read. But after book 5, which I did not like, I was kind of ready for the wrap up to be over so I could see how everything concluded. However, if you have not picked up the series, The Falling Kingdoms by Morgan Rhodes, I really highly recommend that you do it because it's such a great book series. Specifically, the first 4 books are all 5 stars. They're all incredible. The dynamics are great. The character development, the character growth, amazing. And then for me, 5 kind of fell flat a little bit and 6 was just kind of okay. So let me give you a brief synopsis of the first one, just in case you want to go ahead and read it. So it's about a kingdom called Pelasgia, Limeros, and Aurelios, and all 3 kingdoms have different characters in them, and all of those characters, all of their lives kind of end up getting intertwined, and it's about the struggle of power between the different kingdoms, and it's really great. I know a lot of people say this, but if you do like Game of Thrones, you'll probably like this. There are a lot of similarities between them, honestly. Some of the biggest is that Morgan Rhodes actually echoes some of the writing style of George R.R. Martin. Specifically in the chapter headings, we follow different perspectives, and not just 1 or 2 perspectives like a traditionally published fantasy novel, but we have, oh gosh, at times 6 different character perspectives, and a lot of them change throughout the series. And also, just like George R.R. Martin, she kills off main characters. Not quite to the extent of George R.R. Martin, but enough so that you can tell the similarities because we haven't really seen anything like this in the young adult genre so far. I recommend it. I thought it was great. High fantasy, really fun. Perfect book series to start if you're in a reading slump. The next book I read in the month of May was this, Crazy Rich Asians, and this is by Kevin Kwan. This was a really interesting book. I actually picked it up because I saw the movie trailer for this, and the movie trailer looks hilarious and really cool. So I picked this up hoping for a really funny read, and it did start off as really funny, and some of the characters, some of their relationships in the dialogue is pretty hilarious. But I will say that the book was a lot more dramatic and sad, especially towards the end, than I had anticipated. Having said that, I actually already bought the other 2 in the series, and I am going to continue on with the series because I did like it. I probably would would give this book like a 3.5 as well. So this book is about a girl named Rachel, and she is a professor, and she is dating a guy named Nicholas, who's also a professor. And Nicholas decides that it's time that Rachel meets his family because he's getting very serious about the relationship. So he brings her back to Singapore. What he fails to tell her is that his family is incredibly wealthy. I mean, we're talking would make Paris Hilton look like a beggar wealthy. It's crazy. I'm definitely going to continue on in the series. The next book, oh, and I'm sorry if the lighting has changed. It looks like we're going to get a storm. Anyways, the next book that I bought was The Ocean at the End of the Lane by Neil Gaiman. And let me tell you, this is my new favorite book. I mean, it blew my mind. So I actually bought this book like 3 years ago because a couple people have told me that this book is gonna be my favorite book of all time. So a lot of people know my book taste, but I had been avoiding it because I don't know how to explain it. Have you ever had a book that you were like, oh, that's gonna be the one. That's gonna be like the best book ever. And then you put it off because you're almost intimidated by how good you think, like you're building it up in your head to be, and you don't want to be let down. That's how I felt about this. But for years, I've been watching Neil Gaiman interviews on how to be a better writer and how to stay diligent, and I know so much about Neil Gaiman. And then finally one day I was like, okay, I have so many of his books just sitting over there on my bookshelf. I watch his stuff all the time. Like, what is my problem? So I picked up the book, very short book. It's like 170 something pages. And let me tell you, I read it all in like the span of 3 hours, cried my eyes out. I thought it was beautiful. It was poetic. It was incredibly written. I mean, it's like genreless. There's not like, it goes all around all these different genres, and I'm all over the place because talking about it actually makes me feel flustered. It makes me feel like I am talking about Leonardo DiCaprio. I don't know. Anyways, so what is this book about? This book is about an unnamed narrator who goes back to his house that he grew up in for somebody's funeral. And we don't know whose funeral it is, but I'm going to assume it was probably his father, to be honest, because his father is a central character, a very important character to the narrator in here as well, although we don't know the father's name either. After the funeral, the main narrator then goes to the house at the end of the lane where there is a farm that he used to visit there as a boy. And there is where he met Letty Hemstock and the Hemstock farm. And it's, I mean, just even saying her name fills me with such joy because now I love Letty Hemstock too. Behind the farm is a pond, and Letty Hemstock used to say that that was her ocean. That's essentially all we get from the adult perspective, because once he's at the farm and once he's at the pond, then all of a sudden he goes back to being a child, and we hear the rest of the story from a 7-year-old's perspective. It's whimsical, it's charming, it's beautiful. It's a 7-year-old trying to make sense of his family and the family dynamics, and learning that the world can be an ugly, scary place, and learning how to navigate through a lot of really, really heavy issues that I think are too heavy for a 7-year-old, but I think a lot of us have dealt with really, really heavy issues around 7, 8, 9, 10, and that's kind of when you start to grow up. But it's also when you still believe in magic. And so it's a really beautiful age. This book blends magical realism with fantasy, with sci-fi, with, with adult fiction, with like a children's literature element in it. I mean, it's just absolutely beautiful. This is not for kids though. This is definitely an adult book. I highly recommend that you read it because I've never read anything better. Well, actually, I mean, Harry Potter, obviously, but as far as for adults and everything, I don't know if I've ever read something that has affected me quite as heavily as The Ocean at the End of the Lane has, and I'm definitely going to be doing a review on it. I've taken a lot of notes on this one as well. I wasn't anticipating doing a review on this, so this won't be for a while, but yeah. Excited, obviously. And then the last 2 books that I read, it's from the Wayward Children series, and it was Down Among the Sticks and the Bones and Beneath the Sugared Sky, both by Seanan McGuire. If you have never read her first book in this series is Every Heart a Doorway, and it's a fantastic book. It's one of the best books I've ever read. May was actually an incredible month for me because I didn't have a single bad read. They were all great reads. And actually these 2 books here, I would say that this book here was like a 4.5, and this book here, probably more like a 3.8. It was really good, but it wasn't quite as good as the other ones. And then obviously Every Heart a Doorway, because of how original and amazing it was, this is a 5-star read for me. So I highly recommend this one. So I'm not going to tell you what Beneath the Sugared Sky is about because it kind of spoils some of the stuff that happens in this book, which is the first book. So I'm going to go ahead and put that over here. But I can tell you specifically what these two books are about because this book right here doesn't really relate to this book. So Every Heart a Doorway is such a cool concept if you have not heard of it. You know how kids are always going off and having adventures, falling down wells and rabbit holes and flying off to Neverland, and then they come back, right? Well, it can be really damaging if you think about how scary it would be to be Peter from the Chronicles of Narnia, who comes back and he's young, he's 12, 14, somewhere around there. But when he went to Narnia, he lived out a whole life. You know, he was like 40 and he was hunting with his brothers and sisters and he was a king. He's probably experienced a lot of adult sensations and things, just like Lucy had. Lucy was an adult. She was an adult lady who might have been a wife and a mother. We don't know. And then all of a sudden they're back as these children. I mean, and then you're 6, but you're really like 30? That would be really traumatic and pretty hard actually to deal with because you can't think like a 6-year-old anymore. You're a 30-year-old. This book is all about all those children who cannot figure out how to live once they're back in the regular world, where you and I are from, unfortunately. So it's really, really great. It's really cool. When these children can't cope, they are sent to this place, which is the Wayward School. It's supposed to be almost like a mental hospital for children, but really it's a school where you're allowed to be yourself and you're allowed to wait for the magical world. And some kids get to go back to their magical world, and other kids have to learn how to stay in this one and cope in this one, and it's brilliant. It's really cool. There's a lot of magic and madness and some murder mystery in here. It's dark, it's eerie, it's very scary. If you haven't read this, maybe hold off until October. Amazing book. And then this book here delves a world that some of the children in this book were in, and it's called The Moors, and the two characters are named Jack and Jill. And they're both girls, they're both twins, and they end up going to this really cool place called The Moors, which is not a cool wonderland. It's a really creepy place that not a lot of kids would want to go to, but they happen to love. It's definitely an original book, so unique, so amazing. I think that you should wait until like fall to pick this up because this would have been perfect around October, and I'm kind of sad that I didn't wait until then, but I just couldn't. I wanted to read them now. Okay, you guys, that is it for my month of May. I had a great reading month and I'm really, really happy about it. What have you read during the month of May? Do you have any recommendations based on these books? Please leave them down below. What did you read during the month of May? Do you have any suggestions for me? Until next time, keep your head in the clouds and your heart in a book, and I will talk to you later. Bye!